It is showtime. How are you today, Angie?
I am doing so great. I'm so excited to learn more about the topic at hand. This one is one that I'm actually really excited about. I did a lot of research on this topic in particular at the beginning of the year, so hopefully there'll be some really interesting discussions. And again, I'm really excited to see what they bring to the table. What about you? How's your day?
Oh, it's been really good. I woke up early and I feel like I've already accomplished a ton. It is only 9:30, and it's always a good day when we're with these teams. It's so interesting because this topic is the first time we're ever doing that in this class. So I think we're on iteration 5 or 6 with these classes, and this is the
Whoa.
first time. And the reason, Angie, is because students kept talking about social media and mental health. What is that doing? And on Monday, we went into some of your great research on what does it mean to flourish and what's the difference between correlation and causation, and why are some of these things sort of like creeping into this topic, which I think is really interesting. And I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mental health and social media definitely have gone hand in hand, and there's so much research in recent times that I think this is a great topic to delve into. And I'm so excited that this team is apparently the first one.
They are. And the other thing that I will say about this team, and I'm just going to slowly bring them up to the stage right now, is that they are just so fun to sit at their table because they are always on point, on task. They know what they're doing. They have great conversation. I do feel like they're going to bring the conversation today, and it's going to be really interesting. I am very excited for your show. I do want to introduce our class. I'll say hello to our class who is joining. And then I'll introduce you. But our class should now be joining. Again, this is our MC4326 Advanced Social Media and Analytics class. Today, we're going to be talking about social media, bodies, and mental health. The team is welcome to go in any direction they want as long as it's roughly in this sort of vacuum area. Our class should be joining today across any platform they choose, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitch. We are encouraging them to go to a platform they haven't been an audience member on before, so hopefully that is a fun experience for them. With us today, we have Group 5, and Group 5 has just been a pleasure to watch grow and expand over this semester. We have Foster, Evan, Anthony, Brock, Ariana, and Andon. And I know that you've been planning and working so hard on this show, and I'm really excited to dive in. And I want to apologize because I accidentally shut down my interface right before they came on, and I could see their faces when I logged back in, like, oh no. Don't worry, we weren't even live yet, so this is all going to be fine. and it's part of the fun of having a live show. It's like mistakes happen sometimes, including by me. Okay, so so thank you for the classmates who are joining and commenting. That's really lovely. We are grateful to have you in the chat. I want to pass things over to, I believe I'm passing it over to Anthony. Have a great show, friends. And we will be jumping in, of course, because we are so excited for your show.
All right, first off, I want to thank Miss Professor Nicole for the lovely introduction. She gave us a nice little piece to start off with. I feel like the expectations are really high. We are going to be talking about social media, bodies, and mental health today. I know,
so
but
you know.
it's all right. You wished us well. The chat wished us well. We're off to a good start.
You are.
And so I know they mentioned that there is a lot of research being done recently. However, I want to talk on a book that's gained a lot of popularity recently, speaking about the direct correlation between mental health and social media, specifically in how it affects young adolescent minds. The book I'm going to talk about is Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And since its publication, it has been criticizing by Parenting Digital and other professors in an article where they point out 10 problems with his book. Among them, they list how he cherry-picked his research, highlighting a lot of studies that backed his theory, and he kind of dismissed or omitted information altogether that didn't support it. And so a big claim that he made was the social media's use on sleep, or its negative effect of social media on sleep. And he claimed that this wasn't a mere correlation, it was actually causal. And so while claiming that the increase of use of tech is the main explanation for declining mental health, he failed to fully explore alternative explanations. Haidt mentioned overprotective parenting may play a role, but he dismissed other options such as rising academic pressures, societal changes, and systemic issues that could affect adolescents' well-being. It's hard to pinpoint that social media is the problem when we have so much going on in our lives. Everything from when you wake up to when you go to sleep has an effect on your mental health. And so many of his arguments were kind of generalized, almost assuming that everybody was affected in a similar way, which obviously isn't true because we all use social media differently. And there is a lot more research to note the negative effects of technology, but that doesn't mean there aren't any positive. Many people use tech to create or many people use technology in creative and innovative ways to share their ideas, products, and services. They can spread their message a lot easier and they use it to stay connected to their families. Technology gives almost anyone access to anything, which is almost scary because you have access to both the good and the bad. And at some point, you have to realize that not everybody should be able to access all of it. And so, especially young minds don't need to be viewing everything on the internet. Haidt proposed 4 reforms to give youths a healthier childhood. The most notable suggested banning access to smartphones until 14 years of age and social media until 16. Now, that's kind of interesting because recently there's been a big controversial global debate about social media and kids' mental health. Florida has been at the center of it because they recently passed a bill banning social media for kids under the age of 16 or under the age of 14. My bad, guys. And I kind of found it interesting that they would pass a bill on something that there's so little research on. It's kind of like, how are you going to make something or pass a bill on something you don't know much about? And so this is kind of an example of a government taking responsibility and they had plenty of support, but they also did receive a lot of backlash because people saw this as a parental matter. And so that kind of raises the question of where does the responsibility lie? And now shortly we are going to get into how social media shapes our body image, AI's role in social media, the type of content found on these platforms, and how platforms are combating this crisis. For now, I'm going to pass it to Ariana, who will speak about the pressures of adolescents face.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's doing great. So today I'm going to be diving into a study called Social Media is Not Real Life. And the study essentially is breaking down the effect of overly edited images of women on these platforms and would putting a disclaimer on these photos would putting disclaimers on these photos affect the women that are seeing them. So I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to go ahead and type it in the chat for everyone. So my question is, throughout your time on social media, what are some beauty and body trends that you have seen come and go and how have they affected you? Send that in there. Okay. So while that's going through, this study focused on young women between the ages of 18 through 25. They found that those were the most susceptible to being influenced by these pictures. So they were shown edited images of women, of their body, of their face. They were shown pictures that did have disclaimers and pictures that did not. And what they found is that there was no correlation between having a disclaimer and not having a disclaimer. It was they were essentially measuring how the women felt after seeing the pictures about themselves and how they felt about the women. So what they found is that a lot of the women were creating animosity towards the people that were posting these edited pictures. It was more so to where the women were feeling, if you know you are editing your pictures, why are you gonna post them? If you know your pictures are edited. So a lot of the women were feeling animosity towards the participants on the social media. And then they also found that a lot of the women, even though they knew that the images were fake, that they were not real, that they were highly edited, in their minds, it still affected their body image because of the likes and engagement that these photos get. It still affected their self-esteem. So, see, as well, sorry. So the study was trying to basically dive into what affects body dissatisfaction. And it came that it was the exposure to the images and the attention that the images were getting that was affecting the women's mental health, not so much the images themselves. And I personally believe that a big cause of this was COVID. When COVID came around, a lot of people were on social media more than ever before, and this exposed us to a lot of attractive people. And due to us seeing a lot more of these attractive people, it skewed a lot of our minds on what a quote unquote normal person should look like. And I feel that led to a rise in mental health issues because a lot of people were starting to get these, body dysmorphia and low self-esteem issues when everybody was on social media, and you're just seeing the progression all these people have. And when you're not undergoing those same weight loss changes, the same clear skin changes, it leads to you feeling dissatisfied with yourself. So, as for what they said could be done, the study suggests that instead of relying on these disclaimers, that we should show more diverse bodies and promote media literacy. And I'm going to go back to the chat and answer some of the questions. And
Before you
Foster,
do
sorry to
that,
bring it up, but you can go ahead and bring up your example.
oh, I was going to say, before we go to the chat, I want to chat with your team a little bit. I want to see what everyone on this team thinks about Ariana's really outstanding question. So, what are the sort of body and beauty trends that you've seen, and how do you think they're impacting people?
So I would say the biggest example that comes to mind for me, because I love makeup so much, is probably the clean girl aesthetic. And there was a lot of topics around this on social media. I think it actually came around the time, like a little bit after 2020. So, because that was like, I think it was like Scene was kind of in, or like a interpretation on that culture or that aesthetic. But clean girl aesthetic, like where it's like dewy and it's supposed to look like you have makeup, but not actually like you're not wearing it, if that makes sense. And so this affected a lot of women who they felt like it affected a lot of women who have like acne or people who have acne. I think that's probably an example that I can think of that would have a negative effect on people who don't have clean skin and have to have coverage to be able to cover things that they want to cover. Does that make sense?
That's such a good example. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I think an example I think I think of is the I see like a lot of people, like a lot of bodybuilders, and like I think like steroids and like these charms, and like I think impressionable teens and like be like, yo, I want to be like that big, I want to be that jacked, and like they'll like use those like steroids at like a young age, and I think that can like really affect their bodies and like being to want to be like super jacked.
Yeah, even my 11-year-old, he saw a picture of one of these guys and he's like, how do I become like that? And I was like, no. Anthony.
Yeah, I feel like just seeing those images and seeing those people, especially at a very young age, it puts the pressure on the individual viewing it. Like, hey, like your kid, how do I get like that? How do I become that? And a lot of times those people aren't posting that they have meal trainer, or they have meal preps, they have trainers, they have regimens that they're following. Some of them, like Andon mentioned, are taking anabolic steroids or other type of supplements. And I feel like what Ariana talked on, how there's altered photos or like altered images, or people are photoshopping their images. It goes into the same category. You have these influencers who are taking these steroids and they're not voicing that, and it puts the image, and then they put their image on social media, and so it creates that sense that like this is achievable naturally when it's really not. And it happens from everything with financial like advisors who go online and they boast their online forums. They say, oh, let's get rich at 20, but they don't really show you the behind the scenes.
Thank you. I have some questions for your team that kind of pull off of this discussion. One is this simply a remediation of former forms of media, like this representation problem? Like, so I spoke in class on Monday about how I used to look at all these fashion magazines when I was really young, and my parents were very worried because I would like go on crazy diets to try and look like the women in the magazines. So is this kind of like the next evolution of that one, or is it different in some ways, and why? And then the question I wanted to ask on top of this, because we've always known, like, so if you think about like a magazine, a printout magazine, there was photoshopping happening even when I was a kid. But now we have filters and we use these filters over all of our images, whether you're a bodybuilder or you want that perfect clean aesthetic on the makeup or like whatever it is, like we're using filters all the time. And there's a great study that suggests that people automatically just assume that we use these filters. So I'm curious what you think, the sort of like the historical remediation of like touching up of images and how that represents and is perceived by young people. And then number two, taking that a step further, what role do filters specifically play, given that everyone can use them all the time?
I guess I would like. Oh,
Go ahead, Foster.
I guess I mean I would just say that I think it's a little bit of a quicker path. I think there was. I mean, obviously, I didn't grow up with magazines as much. I maybe when I was like a preteen, but I would say that there was more of a general awareness, like you said, that it was like photoshopped. But I feel like it was almost more settled. I think there's also a quicker path to consumption. Like I think, you know, you had to physically buy and look at these magazines, whereas I feel like with social media, you know, everyone kind of has like a pull to be on it because of personal branding and stuff. And so I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's more
I
like
was
in
gonna
your
say,
face, I guess.
I kind of agree on the idea that it's similar to past media, just kind of on steroids because it's the same Photoshop, the same kind of techniques, the same skills. It's just everywhere now. It's ubiquitous. Everybody's phone can use it, or everybody has access to filters. Everybody can use it. And I think that I lost my train of thought. But to go on to that second point with filters in specific, since everybody can use them, I feel like it's become, or a lot of people have become more aware to it. So it's like in maybe 10 years ago when people were first starting to use Photoshop on their images and post social media photos with altered images, it might have shocked people or people wouldn't have been so quick to guess that. But nowadays, you're gonna have, if you're an influencer, you're gonna have thousands of people screenshot that and call you out on it because everybody has access to filters and everybody has access to Photoshop.
I want to bring
Yeah.
this back. Oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Was
No,
that-
you're good. I was just basically saying, like, I feel like nowadays it's definitely kind of shoved down your throat a little bit because no matter like where you go, what you're doing, you're always constantly seeing like someone who's either like better than you or just like, I don't know. I feel like body images are so tough nowadays because you never know what's real. And it's so hard to differentiate because I feel like I have a lot of trouble sometimes like looking at someone and being like, dang, like I kind of wish I looked like that. But, you know, at the same time, kind of stopping yourself from differentiating like what's real and what's not.
I love that, Evan. I think that's so interesting. And it's actually where I was going to go next with the bringing it back to what Ariana was saying about these tags, right? Like if you put a tag on a photo, does that make women less likely or more likely to have body images problems? But now, and you're on Instagram. Who here is on Instagram? Some of you are on Instagram. Okay, so like everyone is on Instagram. You know they have that AI tag, right? Like they're tagging all of our posts with AI. And I would argue this is just, to use Evan's words, like it's filters on steroids. And so if we think about sort of that filtering through AI and the tag of AI, what does that implicitly tell you about a particular type of body? Like if you were to see a bodybuilder and it tagged with AI, or if you were to see a model and it tagged with AI, like what does that tell you about the validity, to go back to Evan's point, about that image? But I kind of want to go to Ariana because she hasn't had a chance to jump in at all lately.
No, you're fine. I wanted to answer the other question you had asked. Um, I was gonna say I think the problem is that everyone is getting access younger and younger than we did before. So even like there's 5-year-olds who have access to Instagram and are seeing these women with like some of some of them like the BBLs and everything, and they think that's normal. That's what I'm supposed to look like. And they carry that with them as they grow up. And then you have a whole generation of kids now who all they know is, these highly, the bodies with the surgery and all the highly edited image. That's all they know. That's all they've seen. So they have like no conception of what, like I said, a normal person looks like because all they've grown up on these photoshopped images. And you can tell a child, hey, this image is Photoshop edited. They can't tell the difference. Putting a tag for like a teenager, they're not gonna understand like you know what you mean by this is photoshopped. So
That's such a good answer. And I think it links to Kylie's answer to your question, which is like the trends also change. So social media plays a discursive role in framing what the acceptable body is at any given point. And I think that it's not just about representation, but also about like a platform discursively making decisions about what they're amplifying. And so it's like the skinny trend one time, and then, you know, to quote unquote with Kylie's words, you're like the thicker trend later, which I think is interesting. Do you want to read this one out for me, Ariana? And then you can take the reins again.
okay, it just came up. So she said, Sunny Day Liz said, I've seen a lot of makeup influencers do trends where they have zero makeup and it transitions quickly to a fabulous makeup look. The only effect I had from this trend was seeing how much makeup can change a person's look. Honestly, I fully 100% agree with that. As someone who has participated in one of those TikTok makeup trends, I will say it takes a lot of makeup. And I can stand here and say that I know I personally look nothing. I don't look the same. To me, that's the point. Um, but like I said, I think there are levels to it. Cause I do it for fun. I'm not the type of person to go around with a full face of makeup and act like that's how I look 100% of the time. Like I just wake up just face perfect. Which there are some TikTok influencers I know that do that, especially makeup. I saw somebody else mention it earlier. I'm not exactly sure of the name, but they mentioned, like you said, their girls would come on and be like, hey, this is my no makeup look. But it's really an entire full beat face, foundation, makeup, everything. And it's like, you know, when someone comes looking for, hey, I want to learn how to do clean girl makeup, and here you are with a full beat face trying to pass it off as a clean girl look. You know, when someone comes along looking for that and they try to do it, they're not gonna get it because that's not what you're advertising it as.
Really great observations, Ariana. Whitney says, and this kind of relates to what Kylie said earlier. There's like, you know, we have like this gym talk, right? Like on TikTok where everyone's posting gym selfies and gym videos. And I actually think that's on Instagram too. I see it all the time on both platforms. But this like it pushes off to skinny talk. And then Kaylana says, bouncing off of skinny talk, there's like the whole girl dinner thing. I can see Angie. Jump in, Angie.
Oh my gosh. The girl dinner thing, I feel like as someone with copious girl roommates and like girlfriends, this is absolutely one of the worst things to come out of TikTok. I mean, I know there's a lot of bad things.
Worse.
This one was like a silent killer, I think, because girl dinner was like this funny, fun trend. And the worst part is that it's like a catchy tune. It's like girl dinner, you know? And so like it's just this overwhelmingly.
Thank you for singing that.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Everyone just needs to know what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And so essentially girl dinner is, if you don't know, it's whenever you don't have the funds, the time, or the energy to, you know, make a meal. So you just go with whatever. So someone will, you know, have a water bottle and be like, girl dinner, and that's all they're eating. That's all they're consuming for the day. Or so now it kind of like glamorized being excessively like resourceless. And so anytime someone was hungry but they didn't have anything, they'd be like, okay, a slice of bread and milk, girl dinner, and that's all they had. And so it kind of gave people not an excuse, but I think it kind of lessened the desire to do hard work. Like, to give you an example, I'm really big on food. Like, for me, that's one of my things that I don't compromise on. You know,
you don't know. Angie has a whole blog devoted to going to every restaurant in San Marcos she has been to. So if you need food recommendations, she's not just your graduate assistant.
Yeah, I got you.
She can give you it.
Yeah, and that's like another thing. Like on Instagram, I'll like post a little meal that I did and stuff like that. So I try to make myself like a nutritious meal. And then, you know, some other friend of mine will be like, oh man, I have the ingredients in the fridge, but instead I'm just gonna do girl dinner, and it's a cup of orange juice. And I'm like, take the 10 minutes to make yourself at least a sandwich, something that's filling. I think that this is a little bit dangerous, again, glamorizing the non-nutritious side of things. So yeah, girl dinner is something that really, really grinds my gears.
I love that.
I think Foster had a little raised his hand.
I was gonna say, I see some nods in the room, so I'm curious if people want to jump in, A, and B, if anyone wants to comment on how they think this maybe impacts, people's perception of themselves in relation to others online.
I want to kind of like go off of that girl dinner thing. I feel like it's kind of interesting to see how, while on the female side of things, you had a focus on kind of like negative diet trends or like nutrition, uh, negative nutrition habits, where on the male side of things, you had a kind of glamorization of things like cigarettes or alcohol, and it kind of created this sense of like that's what it is to be a man, to have one of these addictions, or to like be so stubborn in your addictions that you don't realize it's bad for you. And I feel like that is creating, like like Professor Stewart said earlier, social media creates the standard, or creates what our image of what we should be is. And I just feel like that's an interesting topic, or an interesting idea.
I would agree with that. I think when we see these things kind of making light of not eating well or feeling like you need to constantly eat healthy, people when they see that all the time, I think it can even get onto a subconscious level where people start overcomplicating just what they're going to eat, and I think that can be dangerous and almost toxic to a sense because you can't really escape it. And once you learn that habit, once you have that in your head, it's hard to kind of unlearn it. And it can cause people to make decisions that um, even just for simple, just something as simple as eating becomes overcomplicated and people overthink it and it can mess with their identity a little bit. So I definitely think that affects them. And I think it can be a very hard thing to escape or unlearn.
To add on to what Brock said, like I completely agree. That's like very succinctly summarized. And then I also think just the fact, oh, hold on, Isabella Cruz. I've also seen instances where girl dinner has made women self conscious about their eating habits, often making them feel as if they eat too much for having regular sized portions. I completely agree. Isabella, this is the whole point I was trying to get to. And I feel like it's also kind of worse because there is like a subtly kind of built in positive reinforcement if you don't eat well. Because if you don't eat well, that's a post you can make. And you can be a part of the girl dinner trend. It's like if you don't eat well, you can join us here in this community of girl dinners. So I definitely see how it's not only negative for all genders to have kind of like a feminine or masculine correlation to these really dangerous or not healthy, at least, trends, but I can also see how it's kind of a little bit of a feedback loop, self-serving, since engaging in those trends is something that people want to do, want to be part of a community.
It kind of seemed like something that backfired. Like it almost seems like it was something that was supposed to make light of a lot of outside factors, like Ariana said, like, women's body image and how society perpetuates these ideas of what you're supposed to look like on women. But also I think like right now, Gen Z is still fairly young, but like a lot of people can't afford groceries. And so I think it was, or they're busy with college because they're still young, or in high school. And so I think it was almost something that was trying to make light of a situation, but it kind of backfired. And Brock's going to talk a little bit about how hopeful messaging can sometimes have no effect or even the opposite. I think this trend was kind of an example of that, I think.
And then, yeah, we'll go to Brock. And then Foster, I think you completely summarized Sunny Day Liz. She was like, I kind of saw girl dinner used in a different way where people use humor to cope with not having much for dinner. Like, I do think that was maybe the intention, and a good intention too. Like there's good and bad things that come out of most things, especially social media. So I can see how it definitely would be a good coping mechanism to kind of normalize that it's okay if you don't have a 5-star meal every night. But I did think kind of like the whole on steroids thing, it got carried away and twisted.
And I think that's a really interesting point to touch on because it really brings up the idea that message that you send out is not the message that's received. Like it could have initially started as being something to cope or like a humorous joke, but it transitioned to having a more negative connotation or positive reinforcement on a bad habit. And I feel like that's really interesting to see how the type of messages that we put out there can be interpreted differently. And that takes us into our next point, which Brock is going to talk on how hopeful messaging can either benefit us or not.
Thank you, Anthony. So yeah, I would like to present a study by Eileen Beelan and Catherine Carsey called "The Future is Bright." Is it? So Beelan and Carsey, sorry, asked the central question: can hopeful messages on social media boost hope, life satisfaction, reduce mental health stigma, and encourage support or self-disclosure? The study also examined whether a post's popularity, based on the number of likes, made any difference. So the research conducted a two by two survey experimented with 479 young adults that consisted mostly of college university students. And these participants saw Instagram style posts that varied by one, message type, so hopeful messaging, and more neutral posts. And then also social media endorsement, so high versus low number of likes. And then the researchers hypothesized that participants who saw hopeful messaging and or post with high number of likes would lead to people having more hope and being generally more optimistic, having greater life satisfaction, less stigma, and a more willingness to self-disclose or support others. And these results showed that there was no significant effect from hopeful messages on any of the key outcomes. There was no interaction and effects between hope and number of likes, but there did show significant results that neutral post with high likes slightly increased life satisfaction. And that's something that I don't think would come as much of a surprise to anyone. I think if anyone who posts something on social media, I think can admit it feels a lot better to get something with a lot of likes and a lot of positive engagement as opposed to something with no likes or hopefully not negative engagement. So why didn't this work? Well, there were some limitations that mainly consisted of hopeful content is already common on social media, so much so that users may just be desensitized to this kind of content. The messages may have been too subtle or generic to produce any change or phase any of the participants. And then there's also a self-disclosure and support behaviors that may require more personal or emotional triggers. Nice quotes and cartoons are probably just not enough for people to have any sort of um, to make any sort of change in people and really change people's minds. So, in conclusion, hopeful content alone isn't enough to create meaningful change in mental health attitudes or behavior. Likes don't amplify the effects unless the content is already impactful. And for real change, content probably needs to be more emotionally engaging and include self-efficiency elements or use things like real life nonfiction stories and video to really hone the point down. So this study reminds us that while positive content looks good, we need to be cautious about just assuming that it's actually helping. For mental health communications to be effective, it needs to go beyond just feel good post, and it needs to make a real effort to actually connect with people. So I'm curious to hear what the chat thinks. Can too much positivity actually harm our understanding of real mental health issues? Um,
Oh, that's a good question. I'm just going to pin it for everyone. So, those in the audience, please engage with us in the chat. Can too much positivity actually harm our understanding of real mental illness issues? I'm curious what all of you think.
I mean, maybe I'm thinking of like the idea that like with the idea of that like positive the positive like content has to be like, oh, you have to be happy all the time, you have to be this that like happy. I mean, like people get sad. Like I feel like that's like a human.
They call that toxic positivity, right?
Yeah.
Like you're so happy all the time that it must be toxic. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so you're just like so like it might be like, oh, like why am I sad? Like I should not be. Yeah, so I feel like toxic positivity can definitely like it might produce like toxic positivity and not like a like just a like an actual like help, like an actual like just motivational boost.
And I think we've talked a lot about authenticity in this class. And talking about toxic positivity and how things sometimes it can backfire. I feel like people see through it is kind of why. Like for example, recently Katy Perry went to space, and I feel like they framed it as something that was supposed to be like positive in the sense that it was, feminism, women in a male, dominated space, going to space. But I feel like people ended up making people feel disconnected rather than uplifted.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if anything, it actually pointed out that, lower class and middle class Americans can barely afford food, but Katy Perry gets to go to space. And so I think if anything, sometimes people do see through it. So sometimes I think it can harm understanding mental health, but I think sometimes it can actually better understand, like, wait, this isn't how most Americans live, if that makes sense.
And more importantly, for no reason other than to just go. And what was so interesting at that moment is there's a group of actual female women astronauts who are doing incredible things. And if you don't follow them, I highly recommend them. I follow them all on Instagram. And they're this like really tight group of women who support each other. And one of them did a launch this week, and all of them came together to watch the launch with each other and support them. And I thought, that's how you do it. It's not like sending a bunch of celebrities who have nothing to do with a cause up into the air to see what's going to happen. So too much positivity. I think there seems to be consensus that it turns into toxic positivity. Anyone feel differently or have examples that might be interesting?
Okay, so the way I see it, I feel like there needs to be a balance. So I don't think it should go too far into to toxic positivity, but I also don't think it should be purely just the negative side of things. But I don't think change happens unless you see both sides of the coin. Trying to think of an example. Like one of the examples I can think of is the body positivity movement. I feel like it got skewed somewhere in there about with what it was really about. I know originally it was supposed to be that no matter what body you're in, no matter what body you're in, you're supposed to love it, And I feel like it turned toxic, and that turned into, oh, well, I don't like the body I'm in, this body, I don't like this body. That body is what I want to be because that's the perfect body. I need that body. I need the perfect image. And it turned into everyone, the pictures of, oh, hey, body positivity. I'm super skinny and fit. Hey, this is what I look like. I love myself. I'm happy because I'm super skinny and fit. And then there is the other side of the coin where you have people like, hey, I'm happy, in my skin. I'm thick. I have a bigger body. I'm curvier, and I love myself. But then somewhere in the middle, there was all the people who were, what's the word I'm looking for? There was all the people who were turning it into being either skinny phobic or fat phobic. Somewhere in the middle. And I feel like it had a good intention. It started off as a good intention, but somewhere in the middle, we got mixed up in what it was supposed to be. And over the years, the body positivity movement has turned into something negative.
Oh, I agree with this. Yeah. And I think those examples are really interesting. I'm curious if anyone wants to jump off of what Ariana has said here, because I think this is spot on. Anyone, or you can also disagree, but from my perspective. Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, I was gonna kind of agree because I feel like by human nature, especially when you have a system like social media where things are getting likes, it's human nature to compare yourself. Like, why did that post get so many likes where my post didn't? And it really does put pressure on the user to kind of want to live up to the status or live up to the trends. And I think it's really important to realize that a lot of times it's up to the user's perspective and how they deal with those pressures. And a lot of times people aren't being told, or they're not really understanding those pressures or those feelings of anxiety that they're getting. And I feel like that's why this topic of social media and mental health is such a big one that can be debated about.
Do you think, and this is for the whole group, do you think that that social media creates a situation where people are more, there's a heightened sense of awareness over the body, and they become more critical of their body in the way that we really think through and curate what we take pictures of, what we post, how we present it? And in what ways is this accurate in depicting kind of like potential problems with mental health, and in what ways is it being blown out of proportion? So kind of like a series of questions, answer whatever you want out of it.
I was gonna say, sorry. Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times, especially like I've kind of seen it in my friend group too, it's just people like when they take pictures, especially for social media, they're just over like compensating and kind of just making it like a bigger deal than it is and trying to get like those perfect angles or just to kind of put on like a facade in a way. That way, like other people on social media see them in a different light because they're kind of like nervous or scared about how they see themselves. So they kind of present themselves on social media in a different way so that it doesn't like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like I am kind of a victim of this too, is like I get really self-conscious about what I post. And I feel like if I don't think if one little tiny detail is wrong, I feel like I won't post it just because I get really like caught in my head about it.
I feel like social media, in a way, does, or like I do agree, because when you post something or when you create anything and you're putting it out there into the world for people to see it, you're going to be more conscious about what you're putting out there. Especially when it's your account, you're kind of thinking of the type of image you want to put out there. Maybe you're posting a more or an image that's going to appeal to the opposite gender, or you're posting an image that's going to appeal to your sports team. A lot of times people kind of forget to take into account their audience. For example, if you're posting something that's for the girls and you have a ton of guy friends who are following you, they might not be as inclined to like it, or they might boost you and it can skew the image. But it's really important to remember the perspective, and the way people are using it matters a lot.
I would agree. I think kind of something I've just picked up from us having these discussions about mental health and social media is it can be sometimes social media it can be I think a mental battle that everyone has between choosing what they see on social media or choosing how to look on social media when you're broadcasting your life to everyone you know and the entire internet versus just your human nature. So example would just be, you know, for like the body positivity example, do I want to obsess over my self-image? Do I want to, obsess over every little detail and choose, of what I eat and just really hone in on that just so I can get validation from social media? And like it said in the study, the one thing that was proven was that positive engagement leads to those high moments and people having probably those endorphin highs. So people choose between that versus just their human nature. If people won't eat if they're hungry because they want to look good for social media. People want to fit in. I think it's just human nature on one point that people want to fit in, but then people are ignoring just uh, their fundamental habits. What things they need to do to be people. And I think that's a sad reality that we kind of live in.
I think it all boils
Oh,
down.
sorry.
Oh, I'll go right to you, Ariana. So I think it just all boils down to the fact that social media is like inherently curated because everything that is out there about you has to be something that someone posted. So I do think that just the fact that, as you mentioned, you're posting for an audience, other people are going to see it, so it has to be perfect. Not only are you posting it for other people to see, but you're also inviting people to comment, which is good or bad, but you want it to be good because of the endorphins. So which makes you curate it even more. Kind of what Whitney, was mentioning down here about how body positivity used to be a good thing, and then they merged it with skinny talk. So now that's just not the truth at all. I actually want to, Whitney, if you're watching this, this kind of goes to my next point with how social media is on steroids. So there's a lot of problems, but almost like right after, you also see something good come out of it because people are aware of the filters, of the AI, of the fact that all of this is curated and that it's a problem. So there's on top of the body positivity movement, there's also the body neutrality movement, where it's not saying that you have to love yourself for who you are, no matter your body shape. It's saying that no matter what, you should just respect your body and its capabilities. Whether you love your shape, whether you love your curves or your face, doesn't really matter because you have a heart that beats, you have lungs that breathe for you, you have, limbs that do these things for you every day. So you don't have to love it. You just have to respect it, feed it, get rest, live with this vessel that takes you through your day-to-day life. And so I think, Ariana, I interrupted you earlier, so sorry. I'll let you
No,
have the
you're
floor.
fine. I was gonna say a couple of examples of this that I have seen. I don't know if it was just me, but I know when TikTok was getting banned, I was seeing a lot of memes like, "Hey, if you guys are going on Instagram, you got to get it together because they don't play over there." So essentially, what it was getting at is once you go to Instagram, they're going to judge you. If you post on Instagram, they're gonna nitpick every little thing. And I know a lot of things I've personally seen, especially on TikTok. Some people will post a video being their true authentic selves, and the comments are just ripping them to shreds. They're just, why'd you post this? Da, 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 da. And it's really sad to see, especially knowing that in the past few years that I've been on TikTok, there has been a lot of TikTokers that have taken their own lives from things like that. They're putting their lives on this platform for everyone to see, trying to be their authentic selves, and then they're just getting picked apart daily by thousands of people. And I don't have much of a following, but I can't imagine, waking up every day on a platform with 1 million followers, posting what I think is my true authentic self and having hundreds of thousands of people picking it apart and, telling me I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I doing this? You're too old to do that. Why'd you even bother posting this? There's so many things, especially on, I know, the female side. There'll be guys in the comments picking apart a girl's video. Why does your hair look like that? Oh my God, your makeup looks so much. And it's just random guys just under girls' posts, just picking them apart. And God only knows what that does to somebody. If, like I said, you post a picture of yourself thinking, hey, this is a great picture, I look amazing, and you post it and it's just negative, 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 negative. And it's really sad to see, especially like I said, because a lot of people are getting on social media younger and younger and younger. People are starting to get these nitpicks younger and younger and younger before they've even developed into anything. They're already getting told, hey, your nose is too big, your lips are too small, your body is too big. And this is getting told to like 10-year-olds, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. They haven't even, a lot of them, their voice hasn't even dropped yet. But they're already getting it put into their head that they're not good enough and what they look like is not good enough. And it's not gonna, unless they fix something, unless they change something, they're not going to survive, out here in the real world because they do not fit the part.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's a very interesting thing that a lot of these people feel that pressure and they don't really have anyone to turn to or they don't know what to do with that pressure or that anxiety. And a good example that we found, I believe Evan's going to talk about in his article, so I'll pass that to him.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. But my topic, it's kind of a heavy topic, but it is super, super important. It kind of just shows, especially with our age of new technology in the 21st century, and with artificial intelligence becoming such a big thing in our day-to-day lives, it's just important to know how much of a serious effect it can have on mental health, especially for young adults and teens. So basically, I researched an article about this 14-year-old boy from the US who died by suicide after using a chatbot on a platform called Character AI. So for anyone unfamiliar, Character AI is basically just a website where users can create and talk to chatbots that act like fictional characters or even celebrities. These bots are powered by AI and can hold a long, realistic conversation. A lot of people use it for entertainment or whatever the case may be. But in this case, it became really serious. So pretty much the teen interacted with a fictional character, but over time, he developed a really deep emotional connection to it. He began opening up to the bot about feeling sad and lonely and having suicidal thoughts. And instead of this being like a red flag or any sort of programming being put into the system, instead of helping him or directing him towards support, the chatbot actually encouraged those feelings. And his parents later decided to file a lawsuit. But the AI engaged in an emotionally intense conversation and even romanticized the idea of dying. The bot said things like, "I want you to come home," after he had mentioned plans of taking his life. And that interaction happened just before he passed away. And then in early 2024, the parents decided to file a lawsuit against Character AI, claiming that the company was negligent and they created an addictive, unregulated, unsafe environment for young people. I think it's super important how these companies should realize how much of an impact they can have on someone's life, especially like someone so young and there not being any regulation towards it. Anyone can really hop on the platform and talk about whatever they want to talk about. And it kind of just pains me to know that they didn't even take this into consideration, like with responses and kind of like making it a more like, I guess, healthy platform in a sense, because I feel like it's a really helpful, sourceful tool, but in this case, it was really just taken to a whole other level. So then again, yeah, like I was saying, they filed for a lawsuit. It's still kind of happening right now, but they said that the AI chatbot acted like a real person, building a false sense of trust, ultimately encouraged the vulnerable teen towards self-harm instead of stopping him. They also point out that the platform has no proper age checks, no real content moderation, no warning signs when conversations start to get dangerous. And then in response, Character AI made a little bit of changes, but didn't really say much about it. They added like a couple new safety features, content moderation tools, and links to suicide prevention resources. It just sucks that something like this had to happen before they implemented it into their program. So it kind of just like makes you sit there and kind of think for a second. Because it's not unusual for teens to feel isolated or misunderstood, especially in like today's day and age with the internet. I know I've personally felt sometimes where I feel lonely, especially in middle school and high school, like, transitioning from that like early adolescence period of your life. It's really hard to, sometimes find friends or whatever the case may be. And I feel like especially in today's age, like it's so easy to just go online and talk to someone I guess, that will listen to you no matter what. So it kind of raises a lot of questions. I know I had a couple I wanted to ask. I had just this one that I just sent in the chat. Basically, is it possible to use social media in a way that boosts your self-esteem? And I know there's not like a single answer, but I feel like there's a lot of steps that could be helpful to kind of make it not necessarily like a terrible platform, but yeah. Anyways, let me just read what this question says. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, before I pin your question, Whitney says, my question is, why aren't the parents checking their kids' phones? Parents are quick to blame, sue the companies, but it could be completely avoided if they simply monitored their kids. So I think there's a whole lot of ways to answer this.
Yeah.
This is so interesting, and I'm so curious what your team thinks. I will say that it is possible to jailbreak Character AI. And most of the time when Character AI is telling people to go kill themselves, it has been jailbreaked. So that's like number one. And then number two, don't companies also have a responsibility? Yeah. I feel like there's such a balance here. But let's go to Foster, then Anthony. We'll kind of end with Evan, if that helps. And then we'll come back to your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. I think it feels like almost like regulation hasn't caught up with the technology yet. So like with things like probably right now is like ID checkers with certain things. Some people are arguing that that's like a privacy concern. But I'm curious, like maybe we could have, approach it in an education way where they teach students how to use it ethically and what not to do. I think it was also like a slippery slope adding like characters and like personalizing it. Yes. But I would love to hear what y'all think.
Also, I'm curious how many of their parents even understand what AI is. Like if they were to see the app, like some of them don't even know how to manage TikTok or Instagram, let alone what's Character AI. So sorry, continue on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to. It's hard for these parents to enforce their restrictions, especially when they don't understand the platforms, they don't understand the technology. And not only that, one thing I found while I was reading the article criticizing Kate's book is they found that a lot of times, or a possible backlash to like banning social media for kids under 16 is that if you ban social media for kids under 16 and they still find a way to access it, they're a lot less likely to go seek support when they're doing something they're not supposed to do. And a lot of these parents who don't know how to use the social platforms and stuff, they don't have the information to really teach their child how to properly use it or use it in a positive light. They're not on it enough to know the extent of all the negative content that's out there. And so a lot of people, yeah, it's their kids and it should be the parent, or in my idea, it should be the parents who monitor their kids. You're responsible for your kid, whatever they take, you want to instill morals in them that they're going to go out and be the best person and have the confidence to do that. And so I feel like Evan's going to touch on it a little bit more before we get to Andon, but Andon's going to speak a little bit about where the fault lies. I'm going to hand it back to Evan.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back onto like having stricter age verification. I mean, sorry, I just saw this comment. Lizeth, sorry if I said that wrong. But no, you make a great point just because it is kind of easy nowadays to like look up and try to figure out ways to get around it. But I feel like it'll definitely stop at least a little percentage of people because it's a lot more effort to go through just to like do it. So sometimes people kind of give up. But no,
teenagers never give up on what they want.
I know. You're right. Yeah.
Like, let's be real. If a teen wants to do something, they are going to find a way to do it.
Yeah, okay, that's very true.
And they will likely outsmart their parents with their tech savviness as well, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this is such a hard conversation because yes, parents should be responsible. But then we also need to, as a society, take responsibility for educating them on all the new technologies that are always coming forward. And I don't know that we do a good, like we as a society, as the press, as the people putting out information, do a great job of doing that. And then I do think that we can't just say platforms off the hook because, you know, YouTube got into some hot water and they created YouTube Kids. And by creating YouTube Kids, there was some sort of filter placed on it that said, oh, look, now kids have a safer space to be, and they aren't going to run into these like horrific videos that are about Spider-Man, but actually someone's getting killed in the middle of them. So I do think that there are ways to make a safer internet, safer social media, so kids don't have to lose agency and autonomy. And I do think it would be interesting if we actually put the power, like if we problematize this and said, but what if we made a safer social media? What if we made a safer space so they could be on Instagram, but maybe not see all of this nonsense? But I do think like it's so complicated.
A good point to that was I keep seeing a lot of ads for like Instagram for teens, like, you know, how like parents can have like a lot of control over the account. And I feel like that's a great step towards it.
Yeah.
Because it like stops a lot of that intense content from being like placed through, and parents have more of moderation through their accounts, and it's like automatically private and everything. So I feel like that's definitely a step towards the right idea.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go back to your question now that I've derailed it just a little bit. We do have time.
Yeah, you're good.
So Evan had posted this question to us, and I want the people in the chat to answer as well. Is it possible to use social media in a way that boosts your self-esteem? What do you think? I think so. What do you think?
Sorry.
Oh no, you're right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think so. I think being able to like express yourself and like being able to show like who you are can definitely boost your self-esteem, especially like in public. I feel to like show who you are. I feel like and like also trying to get like positive responses and like sorry, I'm a little congested. No, it's just trying to show like who you are, being expressive, and like also like getting like good feedback or like getting like positive comments can definitely like help boost your self-esteem.
I think it can for sure. You want to go ahead or?
I was just. Oh, you go for it.
Go.
Anthony, then Brock, then we'll go back to Evan, and then we'll move to the next segment.
Okay.
I think I agree 100% that it can be used in a way that boosts your self-esteem. Like I think Brock mentioned earlier, it is human nature to kind of try to find where you fit in, and social media is really good at like helping you find your community. I feel like once you do find your community, it's helpful to have that support and like a lot of times on Instagram, I know I'm a private account on my personal account, and so it's my friends, and I know when I post, they're gonna be liking my image and they're gonna be boosting it for me. And I feel like that kind of, even though I'm not like talking to these people all the time, it helps give me a self-esteem boost that we're still cool enough for them to like my post, or we're still cool enough for them to chat or comment on it. And so I think it is possible.
And I would say maybe just be intentional with like your algorithm. So there is some agency there, like as far as like what kind of content you see. So if there is content like reflecting on how content is making you feel, like there's options to be like not interested or don't show me. So maybe being more intentional with what like your algorithm.
Oh, I use that all the time. Do you use
Me
this
too.
one? I'm just
Yes.
like, no, do not show me more of
Don't want to
that.
see it again.
I don't want to see that. Thank you. Was there someone else before we go back to Evan Brock?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just think I going off of what Andon and Anthony were saying, I think we talk a lot about the negative of social media because that's what gets the most attention and has the worst impact. But there's every day, I think people find, like Anthony was saying, a sense of community. If you're really into makeup or music or something, there's someone out there and people can post about that and it's I don't think any different than just reaching out to your friends in real life. And I think people that can boost people's self-esteem and that can make people feel good. And I think there's a positive to it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of positive things that you can do with the platform. It's just kind of how you take it, like how you allow it to affect you. But kind of just like closing out before we move to Andon, I just kind of want to remind everyone how realistic AI is getting. It's getting insane. I feel like you having conversations can get deep, but at the end of the day, it's still a machine. And if you're already struggling, the wrong kind of interaction can do more harm than good. So I think it's really important we build technology with mental health in mind and that we make sure people, especially teens, know where to go when they really, really need support. So thank you for listening, and we'll move it on to Andon.
Okay, yes. So I want to talk about how these platforms are trying to combat these like mental health crises and like this like mental health crisis as a general, and just talk about like why like it might be happening and whose responsibility is it to like take care of themselves too? Because like really like is it the platform's fault or is it the user's fault? Like, and I think personally, like it's both. Like, you have to like work together because like platforms can like just push this like negative content onto somebody and then just like make them feel horrible and like lead them down this path. Um, but yeah, I just want to ask the question: who's responsible? The platforms or the users for the for their mental health? But going on, talk about the some combats that like some combating that like these platforms have used is like first one that like I saw was TikTok. I don't know if y'all remember this, but like back in the day they used to like put like if you were scrolling for a long time they would put a like a thing like hey like pop up with a notification that say hey like you've been scrolling for a long time like you should take a break, which is kind of unusual because like a media platform doesn't want to like push their people away, like push their users away. They want to like have them on there for longer maybe. So yeah, like monitoring screen time can like definitely help, like trying to like monitor their screen time and like making sure their users are like taking care of themselves is like a big one. But also like Snapchat and Instagram both have like a like also like have like hotlines and like give like help with like if you like look up something like kind of like bad, like you can like give you like help centers for suicide and like eating disorders. Like it'll give you like the like hotline for that. But yeah, like it's also just like yeah yeah.
I think that's a interesting like start to know, because it takes the idea that companies can have a more proactive approach or a reactive approach to the problem. For an example, Andon was speaking how TikTok used to have, when you scroll too much, it popped up saying, take a break. You've been on here for hours. And I feel like that's a real proactive approach. They're trying to get ahead of it. Whereas in Evan's case, character AI waited till an extreme circumstance happened to take action on the problem. And I feel like back to what Foster was saying, and how we use our algorithms, it's also how we use our platforms and the type of platform or which platforms we use. Because different platforms are taking different precautions towards our mental health and they're showing us different feeds. And I feel like that's a big thing to highlight too.
Yeah, they've definitely been helping out. But like social media platforms are still like unregulated and like they're unregulated terrain. Like they're still because they're still new. Like they're still very, very new. And like I don't think there has been like enough time to like really study it. So like trying to like implement these things like are just very like experimental, I would say. Like we don't know if this is working. We don't know like what is happening. Like we don't know, but they're trying. Like I feel like there is responsibility on them, so they have to like try to or like have to like push and like push it.
So to kind of add on, oh, sorry. To add on to what he was saying, some examples I know I've been seeing, if especially on TikTok, if you go and type certain words into the search bar, it won't even bring up anything and it'll bring up automatically like a number. So for example, if you type in the TikTok, like diet, or like sometimes if you type ways to get skinny, it'll automatically come up with the number for mental health services, and it'll come up with like a disclaimer saying, hey, you know, over excessive dieting isn't the way to lose weight. Here's some resources that you might need to look. Same thing, if you were to go and type, maybe something like, you know, suicide or something in that form, or something harmful into this, it'll say the same thing. It'll, hey, there are options for you out there. This isn't the way to go. It'll come up with no videos and it'll only come up with the number for the suicide hotline. And like Andon was saying, I've seen that some of these platforms are taking that initiative to find those keywords that people are typing in. And instead of encouraging them by providing them with videos, with the videos that they're looking for, it shuts it down and automatically, hey, we're not giving you anything related to this. This is showing you might have a problem with this, so we're going to give you these resources to help instead of giving you something to promote what you're looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you haven't done this before, I highly recommend it. And Ariana, really great insight. If you go into Instagram and you start typing in different mental health like issues like depression or suicide, you will notice that the app actually blocks your ability to search it. And I think that is a form of filtering. Is it good? Should they be doing that? Is that helpful or is it harmful? Like if you want to learn about something, is that limiting it? And I do think it's great that they have the helplines like that. They don't block that. Like that's like, actually it's like, you know how it like comes up with like the extra content, like, oh, it looks like you're looking at something sensitive. Like maybe you need to go to one of these resources. So it'll give you that as opposed to like content. What are your thoughts? Have you noticed anything else like that? Or do you have strong thoughts on, should they do that? Should they not do that?
I think it's a really great approach. It definitely falls into that proactive category where they're trying to take initiative. And I feel like if they don't do things like that, then I'm not going to say the responsibility falls on them, but the fault definitely lies on them because it feels like they're being negligible to the idea that what they're putting out. Because a lot of these platforms, they have real addictive algorithms. That's basically what they want you to do is stay there. So they're really addictive, especially to a young mind where they're so used to the instant gratification that they find on there. And so I think I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm just going to pass it over.
I was gonna say, just move it along. That's okay. Anyone else want to jump in? Angie, any thoughts? Or Foster, it looks like Foster's.
I don't know. I feel like that's more neutral. I think it's lacking the humanity aspect, like actually caring, that the empathy that it seems like TikTok was doing. I just think it's like, overall, I think trying to figure out how to word this. I think it's really, especially in a profit driven, like, for being profit driven, we can show these companies that they can care. And I think it points to that users can use they should just use their voice to advocate for them to care. And I think providing resources does take it a step further.
I think that's so interesting, and it raises this even more interesting question based on that of like, what does it look like for a social media platform to have empathy for its users? What does it look like for there to be an element of care embedded into the technological structure rather than it to all be about commoditization and profit. So I think that's such an interesting point. Angie?
And then just to continue off of what Foster and also what Anthony brought up, especially like in such a capitalistic society, I think it just, whenever you want change, you do have to frame it in a way that is appealing to the company. So usually that's in a, oh, you'll be saving money, you'll be earning revenue type way. And kind of what Anthony already brought up, it's showing empathy is actually really, really great marketing strategy because it builds loyalty in your audience. It makes people, trust your platform and want to get on there, as opposed to, waiting until like a horrible situation and then you seem negligible. So I feel like change really does start with what Foster said, the users advocating for some empathy, for some regulation. But then I also think that the backbone will have to be showing them that it is profitable and it is better for everyone involved to show a little bit of empathy in their strategy.
Are there potential concerns with technologizing a sort of strategic empathy through a platform, though? Like, I could see this being both good and backfiring in really interesting ways. We don't have time to actually discuss that, but maybe in class at some point we can come back to this.
I'm just going to touch on that.
Anthony wants to jump in. Yeah, go for it.
I just want to say something. I feel like it's a great idea that the sense of humanity is a profitable business, what's the word I'm looking for? Structure, because it kind of feels like we're taking a more positive tendency of ethics. Like people are wanting to be more caring and open-minded to other possibilities. And I feel like as a society, that's a great light. We're becoming more human.
I love that. We need to move on to the conclusion.
I guess that's my turn. So we covered a lot. So thanks for everyone for sticking around. We've explored how social media can impact mental health, from loneliness, and how social media can have a correlation to that. The effects of body image that Ariana talked about, and then Brock talked about how helpful content might not always be as helpful as we think. Algorithms can contribute to mental health concerns, and raise questions around that. We also discussed the roles of algorithms, how AI is shaping teenagers' experiences, and the importance of authenticity in a increasingly what it seems like curated world. At the end of the day, social media can be positive and a negative force when it comes to mental health. It's kind of both. So while it can help us find support, it can also fuel comparisons, like Ariana talked about, unrealistic expectations, and sometimes harmful content. The key takeaway here is that we think it's important to be mindful about how we engage with social media, both for ourselves and others. So we invite you to make an effort to promote healthier and more authentic online spaces, find your community, but also advocate for changes in policies that hold platforms accountable. Also, next time you're scrolling on social media, maybe take a second to reflect and check in with how the content is making you feel. So maybe unfollow accounts that drain you and follow creators that uplift you instead.
I like that call to action. That's good. Because I feel like sometimes we don't even cue into the fact that certain creators are cueing us in certain ways. So I think that's a really great call to action. And overall, just a really, really fantastic show by Group 5. What a fun and interesting conversation we've had. So thank you for bringing us all of this interesting information, and we appreciate it. And thanks to the audience for asking great questions and commenting in. Angie, any thoughts?
I just wanted to say that this was a beautiful start to the first ever live stream on social media bodies and mental health. That was phenomenal. You guys brought up really great points. And again, I really love the advice, not just the call to action of being more aware of how you interact with social media, but also, encouraging some policy change so that we can, continue into a brighter future. So you guys did a fantastic job. You should be proud. Thank you so much for teaching us today. Thank you to the audience for the great questions.
Thank you. So one thing I want to add is that, I think you've done a really good job in this show of talking about not just correlation, but causation, and how it needs more nuance to these discussions. And I do think you brought that in. As usual, class, we have our social media lab that is due on Sunday. It's related to this topic. And then to be working on that final portfolio project, because that will be due very soon. But otherwise, have a wonderful week and weekend, and I'll see you again next week. Bye, everyone.